one of the things that I think is a little bit unique, I haven't been to, this is my first peer exchange, so I'm a peer exchange newbie, but one of the things that my understanding about peer exchanges is that there really hasn't been a requirement to have private sector involvement in terms of that perspective. It's been a lot of the folks that are in the planning side and on the government side. So we were thrilled to have the ability to incorporate that into this session in a lot of ways. And I'm a former board member of the Atlanta Regional Commission, and so I've been involved to some extent with regional planning and some of the types of activities that the MPOs are engaged in. But one of the things that we did want to do is make sure that we had the opportunity to have the private sector voice some of the specific things that they do, how they've organized their business, and how their supply chain uses the infrastructure that the planners and local government and state and federal governments provide. And so to that end, I'm thrilled to have Mike Orr with us. Mike is with Genuine Parts. He's the Senior Vice President of Operations and Logistics. And also importantly, he chairs the Metro Atlanta Chamber's Supply Chain and Logistics Council. And that's an incredible group of folks involved in all facets of supply chain and logistics. Real estate, Kent's involved on the data side, on the infrastructure side, government partners, and authorities. It's a very, very robust committee, and they do just incredible work. I'm blown away every time that I visit your committees. But let's give a hand real quick to Mike Orr from Genuine Parts. Mike, would you do us a favor? Just provide us an overview, kind of a broad perspective of Genuine Parts, what Genuine Parts is about, and what your role is there, and then talk just a little bit about some of the factors that this is a panel about, or discussion about decision making. Let's talk about the things that are drivers of the decisions, how you've set up your supply chain there at Genuine Parts.
Sure. First, thank you, Dave, and thank you for allowing me to come here and be part of your group this morning. And I'm pleased to be able to talk to you. For those of you that don't know, Genuine Parts Company is a public corporation. You can Google search us and look us up. We're a $14 billion conglomerate. We have 4 distinct operating supply chains. Automotive parts is our primary business, and you'll know our brand Napa, which is our most powerful brand we have. We also operate in the industrial parts sector, which is Motion Industries. And by itself, Motion Industries is about a $4 billion company under the Genuine Parts Company umbrella. We also have an office products group called SP Richards. It's a wholesale distributor and what you'll find in our company, we supply our competitors as well as our customers simultaneously, which I'll talk about is a challenge. And then we have an electrical insulation group we call EIS that is primarily a supplier to OEM manufacturers. So we have 4 distinct types of supply chains that operate under the Genuine Parts Company umbrella. Because of the size of our business, when people talk about supply chain, and my background is in engineering and manufacturing, you generally think of supply chain as from raw materials to a manufacturing plant making a good and shipping it. From our perspective, we don't manufacture. We have a little bit of manufacturing, but primarily we're a redistribution type company. So our supply chain starts from a source factory somewhere, could be in Europe, could be in Asia, could be in the United States, through our distribution centers out to the end consumer. So our supply chain doesn't stop till it's at the end consumer. In a lot of our businesses, there's a reverse logistics to our business, and particularly in automotive, a lot of the parts that we sell actually come back to our distribution centers. They're not used, but in the course of automotive business, especially repair business, people will order the parts they think they need to do a repair. We'll deliver those parts to them. They'll put the parts that they actually need on the car, return the other ones for credit. It's just a standard industry practice. It's not unique to our business. It's an industry practice. So from our perspective, supply chain ends when a part is actually installed on a vehicle. Until it's installed, it can come back to us. So we have a supply chain that we think of from the factory to the consumer and consumption, point of consumption, which is a little bit different than just pure distribution, or I'll call retail distribution. We tell our people in our supply chain teams that it's our belief that the supply chain has a half-life of about 5 years. So we really believe that 5 years from now, we'll be doing half the things we do in our supply chain will be new and different than what we're doing today. And some people think that that might be, a little aggressive. Is it really moving that fast? And I can tell you it really is. Things are changing very quickly, driven by technology, driven by products and the things we have to distribute, and also what I'll call the solutions that we have to provide to people. So in our business, I tell people we have 3 supply chains we manage. The first one is physical product. We distribute physical products, so that's what people think of as a supply chain. The second one is information. We deliver more information every day than we do products. And for most of our customers, if we can actually hand them a box, and they'll look in their system and say, nope, I don't have it. It's not my system, I don't have it. I just handed it to you. I don't have it. Or conversely, if their system shows they have it, but we didn't deliver it, they're happy. So information is very, very powerful. So I tell people we have to manage a very robust information supply chain, and it's becoming more common to be real time. And now the third leg that's taking place now from my perspective is solutions. So people want more than just a product. They want to know about the product. They want a solution. How do I use that product? How can you get it to me faster in a different mode of transportation? And we facilitate all types of solutions. To give you an idea of some of the scale, the numbers that we use, and when you get into big companies, and you'll hear from the Home Depot as well, they have even larger numbers than we talk about, but we'll ship 1 million parcel packages every month outbound to our customers. I'm going to talk just about outbound stuff for a second. We'll originate over 600,000 outbound LTL shipments every year. We operate our own fleet of 10,000 delivery vehicles every day, delivering items from our distribution centers to stores to end consumers. So in the NAPA world, in the United States, we have 65 distribution centers that supply over 6,000 NAPA stores. Some of those stores are owned by a Genuine Parts Company, but the majority are independently owned. So they're not franchises. They're independent store owners that may own from 1 to a dozen stores in various markets that actually operate a NAPA store. Those stores supply up to 15,000 NAPA Auto Care centers. Again, independently owned. People actually repair cars. And then they also supply car dealerships, independent repair shops, major accounts like Firestone or Midas that repair cars. So there are literally tens of thousands of customers that are supplied from those stores every day. An average delivery radius for a NAPA store is about 5 miles. The service expectation is less than 30 minutes from time of order till the part's in someone's hand. So it's a very fast-paced business. We equate it to delivering pizza. And it's actually moved in that direction. And this is where I talk about the half-life being 5 years. Today, because of technology, if you're a NAPA Auto Care Center, we prefer you buy your parts from us, but it's not required. So when you're going to get your car repaired, if you tell the guy, I need to have my brakes are squeaking, and they say, let me take a look at that, it's going to be 3 hours, you say, well, I'll come back. I'm not going to wait. But so they're going to tell you it's 40 minutes. That's just a standard response. Take about 40 minutes. So now you're stuck. I mean, if they said an hour, you may leave. They say 30 minutes, you go, that's time to do it. So they say 40 minutes. At that point, the clock's ticking. They're going to put your car in a rack, take the tire off, see you need some brake components, and order them. So today, with technology, they're going to order from NAPA, from our 2 competitors, and the first one that shows up, that's whose parts they're going to use. Because the parts are somewhat transparent. The same brand, same parts, pricing is pretty close. So they're going to just make sure that you're happy, and they're going to take whatever parts come in the door first, put them on your vehicle. The other 2 people that brought them, they'll send them back the next day and get credit. That's industry standard. So it's almost a race against the clock for every order to deliver those parts. Now, we have some great customers that are a little more forgiving and always favor us, but some people, we understand that need to get the part there quickly. So those kind of dynamics drive our decision-making on inventory deployment, where we stock it. To help with that, we actually track every vehicle registered in the United States, and we customize the inventory assortment in the store based on the vehicle make, model, and age in that region. So within a 5-mile radius. We know that repairs take place between 6 and 9 years on a car. Newer than 6 years, the reliability of cars, things don't wear out or break. After 9 years, people don't invest in their car. It's too old. So we actually try to customize the inventory selection for a store in that 5-mile radius to have the right parts. There are over 400,000 parts that we stock to repair cars. A typical store will have 20,000 of those. So which 20,000 do you put in there? That's where we use some of the data to determine how to place that inventory. So you can see that our supply chains are complex, and how this links into transportation is variability is our enemy. And so in that 30-minute delivery window, we have to try to determine how many delivery trucks do we keep at a given store to service our customer base. And we have this paradox. I have 5 trucks, 3 drivers. What's my capacity? 3 trucks. If I have 3 trucks and 5 drivers, my capacity is 3 trucks. If I have some great customers that order all within, say, 5 minutes, I dispatch my trucks to go deliver those. Then my favorite customer, Dave, calls with a big order. I don't have a truck to deliver. What do? So what we see is developed in the last 3 years, again, technology-driven. There are companies, and one to mine I'll mention is called Fleetgistics. They are a series of independent contractors that actually log on to a website every morning and say, I'm Mike, I have a vehicle, here's the kind of vehicle I have. I'm available to drive between the hours of 9 and 2 o'clock today. And I have a smartphone. And they register. And they'll dispatch an order to them. They'll show up, scan the barcodes, take the order, go deliver it, scan it on delivery, and make that delivery for a very affordable price, for a variable price. And they'll fill a need. And there are literally thousands of people that sign up on these websites across the country available to deliver. They deliver auto parts, they deliver medications from places like Walgreens and CVS. They deliver to nursing homes. And so there's this industry that's grown up of, I'll call, localized independent couriers that are very, very reliable and very affordable. And so that's changing how we're thinking about our distribution model. So now I have access in certain markets to flexible capacity. So if my trucks are busy, I dispatch someone else's truck. In our night delivery, we replenish all of our stores at night. And we do that because it's more dependable. If we drive our trucks at night, there's less traffic. We can make more stops. If we try to replenish our stores during the day, it's very hard to get around, especially in cities like Chicago. Atlanta's very easy, but Chicago's tough. So we deliver at night, and we've been doing this for years. We replenish all of our automotive stores at night, all of our office products distribution centers at night. We have 500 industrial service centers. We replenish them every night, overnight. 3 years ago, we used to have independent logistics networks by subsidiary. So we had our own private fleet, and we would have, in the city of Atlanta, a truck that said S.P. Richards driving around delivering, a truck that said Napa, one that said Motion Industries. Now the good news is we never got in a wreck, we never hit each other, but we started to realize that that was redundant. and then we started consolidating those into common trucks, which seems logical and easy to do, but there's some operational challenges to pull that off. We've since determined that there's actually become the equivalent of LTL carriers that operate at night that commingle freight, and it was driven by the automotive industry, the OEMs, who are also supplying their car dealerships at night with replacement parts. To the OEMs, they said it's mandatory that their carriers commingle the freight on the trucks because they want the absolute lowest cost for delivery. They're not worried about brands. They determined through a lot of study that the parts don't talk. So you can put the parts in the same truck. There's no competitive disadvantage. And they'll deliver those parts at night. These are unattended deliveries. The drivers have keys. They let themselves into the buildings, deliver the parts. They scan barcodes, let themselves back out. We do the same thing. It's all unattended delivery at night. And so we've actually went on that same model. So we actually have since outsourced all of our night delivery to these consortiums of trucking companies, and it's very possible on a given night that our freight's riding with OEM freight, and we know there's 9 OEM brands that ride on our trucks. We now see stuff from FedEx SmartPost, where FedEx is actually delivering to post offices to have the last mile delivery, the residential freight. And so to the carriers, they want to queue out that truck and maximize it. So in certain areas, for example, from Atlanta to Rome, Georgia, they may take 8 trucks off the road because we've all put our freight on one truck, driving to Rome and delivering through a network at Rome every night with handoffs. So all these things are new to us. It presented us, it was an emotional issue for us. We thought driving our trucks that said Napa was a value add to our customers. We thought it was great brand awareness. They drive at night, no one sees them. We've never had really good calls from those trucks at night on all the positive feedback that they get. But it was very emotional for our business to move away from that. But operationally, we're much more consistent. It's lower cost. It's a better use of the infrastructure. We're using that same concept now as we source from Asia. I heard someone talk about large DCs or small DCs. We now, because of information systems, we see the play to go right from factories in Asia, right to our distribution centers and bypass our deconsolidation centers, or even right to our stores. So we actually see the play is to consolidate in a container in Asia and deliver right to our store. It's actually lower cost for us because the ground freight is the most expensive part of our move when we come from Asia. The ocean freight is pretty economical, but the ground freight is the most expensive move part. And then the touching and handling adds cost. So with information systems now, we can see that freight, we can track it. The ocean ships are very consistent in their delivery methods. And so we can plan for that. And our inventory is such that if we turn our inventory 5 times a year, we're content with that. That's 2.5 months. So we can get in a sequence of always flowing goods, and we don't have to worry about long lead times because we're always flowing them. They're on the water. You may hear from the Home Depot as well. Our real focus in supply chain today is to keep flowing goods. We don't want to stop. We don't want to store it at a distribution center. We want to just keep it flowing and have a lot of velocity through the entire supply chain. So we do count on robust, consistent transportation infrastructure to make that happen. All modes, roads, rail. We do a lot of intermodal shipments now. 5 years ago, we didn't do any intermodal, 0. And we thought the railroads were inconsistent, not reliable. Different story today, very reliable, very consistent, maybe a little bit longer lead time. We can handle the lead time change as long as the variability is consistent. So variability is what our enemy is. Lead time we can manage, variability we can't. So we do a lot more intermodal shipments, and we favor that versus putting it on the truck and taking cost out.
Mike, let me ask you a question about, because you talked about distribution centers. Do you have a particular philosophy or an approach on where you locate those centers in terms of relative to population, relative to operational efficiency?
Yeah, and I think our thinking there has evolved as well, Dave. And I'm going to go back, 20 years ago, we were building the mega center, the 500,000, million square foot distribution centers. We were looking for large tracts of land. What we find now is we want to be where the population centers are. Our goods are consumed where people live. To me, in 2008, when the diesel prices went from $1.25 to $4 a gallon, it really changed our thinking on the cost of freight movements. I mean, dramatically. So now we want to be where the population centers are, close to the people, and then we're finding ways to go from source to consumer in one movement.
And then one of the things we'll be hearing from later today, I mean, that's fascinating. I don't know, I mean, I'm just eating this up, by the way. This is just incredible information. One of the things we'll be hearing from Curtis Foltz later today, we're talking about the impact of the Panama Canal expansion and what that'll do for the types of ships, what that'll do to the cost of ocean shipping. What will that do to your supply chain? Will that impact you?
It will impact us, and so today we direct import maybe 5% of the stuff we sell, but we look at our item master and we see that close to 40% of what we distribute originates from an import somewhere. A domestic manufacturer, 3M, we consider that a domestic manufacturer, but we look at the box and it was actually made in China. So we've actually gone to our primary suppliers and said, look, if you're making it in China or in Europe or wherever you may be making it, we'll just pick it up there, because we're going to look at consolidating those shipments and going direct to a DC. Those larger ships are going to lower the cost, the unit cost for each item on that ship. And then it becomes the straight line theory. So if we can get product that we can get through the Panama Canal on these large ships that we can stop in Houston, let's say, and go up through the Midwest corridor, that'll be the lowest cost for us to do that. And we'll take that, we'll make that change very, very quickly. Again, we're learning to become very agile in our supply chain, and it's aided by technology. And so we'll see those opportunities, and we'll switch within days and weeks.
So from a Megaregion standpoint, and we've put up the map, how many ports, I mean, is there a magic number or is there a guideline of how many ports you'll land product at? And will you serve, I mean, for example, the Piedmont Atlantic Megaregion, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, would you serve that from a single port of entry, or would you?
Well, so the challenge for us will be the rates we get from the ocean freight carriers. And so the larger ships, when they go to the ports where the larger ships can dock.
Such as Houston. Houston's already deep enough.
So Houston, we do flow goods into Houston today, but my example will be if you can land it, we go to Savannah a lot today. If we didn't have a deep enough harbor and the big ships went to, say, Charleston, we'd divert to Charleston, because you can actually see the cost change. I mean, we can actually calculate the cost change for the item based on where we land it. So again, even though we have a lot of items, we set up in our systems, we know the total landed cost based on the lane pairs. And so the cost to move a ship from Asia to Savannah with 1,000 containers is much more costly than to move a ship from Asia to, say, Charleston with 15,000 containers. And if we're 10 containers on that ship. So we can see that, and we have transportation management systems that are making those decisions. They're seeing the price differential, and they're reallocating where we will land a container.
Let me ask one last quick question, and then I want to open it up to more questions for Mike, so I hope you'll have some. You mentioned that you resupply your stores, your locations at night. So what's the relative comparison between, what's the pickup you see between making that milk run at night versus trying to do it during the day?
Well, it's actually hard to calculate, Dave, because of the variability in traffic patterns. But a driver can drive 10 hours, and so a driver during the day who spends 3 or 3.5 of those hours in congestion might only be able to make 10 stops. That same driver at night can make 16 stops. So you start scaling across the number of DCs we got to replenish or stores. You have to start adding an extra truck, an extra driver. The costs start to scale very quickly. So we try to do as much as we can in the overnight hours. It's the same 12 hours, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. as it is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., right? So sometimes we forget about that, but we get a lot done at night, and it's very consistent, very predictable, and again, that's what we're looking for, predictability.
And in Atlanta, I know in Georgia's study that I think Cambridge was involved with, during peak hours in Georgia, 6 out of 100 vehicles were tractor trailers, were trucks. And so 94, if you take a look at AM, PM peak in Metro Atlanta, you don't see a lot of big trucks. You see a lot of cars. And you see a lot of single occupancy vehicle calls. So anyway, well, let me do this. Let me open it up for questions if there are some for Mike. Questions about Genuine Parts specifically, or maybe even about what impact the online internet does. Any questions? Terry. And if you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and say your name and your organization.
Yeah.
Kayla will bring a mic around.
Okay. Terry Lawler with the Regional Business Coalition of Metro Atlanta. You made a comment that you changed over from not using rail to using rail significantly 5 years ago. What was it that happened that made you change your logistics model so dramatically in the rail mode?
Well, so the first shock was the fuel price increases in 2008. I mean, they were dramatic. We buy about 1 million gallons a month of diesel fuel. So it would go from $1.25 a gallon to $4. That wasn't in our forecast. That was a shock to the system. And so we had to look for ways. And again, we had a model set up because we're an Atlanta-based company. We have a big cross dock in Atlanta. We'd bring freight into Atlanta, cross dock it. We were driving teams of trucks to Seattle every week, team drivers, truckload of freight going out to our DCs, the single trip, 5,500 miles every week, replenishing our DCs out in Seattle, Tacoma, Sacramento, Fresno, Los Angeles. The cost, I mean, we couldn't afford it. And so we had to try something different. We tried the rail, and it was more consistent than we had tried 10 years ago. And so, we dipped our toe in the water. It became very, very reliable going out west, and the cost differential is dramatic. We couldn't justify driving a truck anymore. And that started it, Terry.
Haley Peckett.
Yeah, Haley Peckett, USDOT Volpe Center. I was wondering how the small-scale deliveries during the day at the local level, how has that affected congestion and vehicle miles traveled sort of on that per parts basis, and how does that factor into your decision-making?
Well, we don't really track the miles driven on our delivery fleet because they're based at a store. But what we see going forward is we're very encouraged by this, what I'll call variable model that we see developing with people, I'll call independent contractors, log on to these sites. We see it being priced by the mile or by the minute, depending on congestion. So from my perspective, if I can make the delivery totally variable, that's my goal. I want to have it vary with each order. Today, my delivery cost is fixed. I got to invest in a truck, I got to hire a driver, and I got to wait for the order and hope I have the capacity planned correctly. And we never do. We have too many trucks sitting there with no drivers, or too many drivers, not enough trucks. And so I want to have that delivery cost be variable. So I can even price for that. And I can even recover part of that with my customer base. If it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and traffic is very congested, even my customer, if I said I need to charge an extra $3 for this delivery, he or she can easily charge his end consumer that same thing because they want their car back. So they'll pay $5 more because they know the traffic is congested. If I can make that variable, then I have a competitive advantage. We think because of traffic patterns as well that this will impact our supply chain in the future, that we think repair centers will start to have evening hours. We think repair centers will start to have what we'll call concierge services, drop your car off, we'll take you over to the movies, and go watch a movie. When it gets out, we'll have your car waiting for you. Those kind of conveniences for people going forward, again, to leverage their investment and their capacity, but also to be more predictable. Today, car repair centers are busy in the early mornings and the late evenings. People who drop their car off going to work or try to do it right after work. And during the day, they're sitting idle. So they're going to try to be more responsive to when consumers want to consume that product.
More questions? Michael Cray?
Michael Cray, Atlanta
Over
Regional
here.
Commission. With the cost of diesel fuel, have you looked at converting to any sort of alternative fuels like liquid natural gas, compressed natural gas? And if so, are there any barriers to conversion that could be overcome or help to be overcome by the public sector?
Well, so there's a couple questions there. Yes, we continue to look at alternate fuel vehicles. We've looked at hybrid vehicles for our delivery fleet, the daytime delivery fleet. We've looked at electrics. They have not been practical for us from an economics perspective. For our large Class 8 vehicles, today the cost of conversion to go to natural gas is very, very expensive. It's hard to justify. You can't get an economic model to justify it from our particular vantage point. And then source of supply. Our Class 8 vehicles are generally over the road, so there's not enough places to refuel. And the time it takes to refuel is prohibitive. So our fleet doesn't lend itself to that type of environment today. We think a more promising thing may be where natural gas is converted to what's called white diesel, where it's more liquid and can be run through a traditional diesel engine, would be a better application for us. But we continue to explore all those options. They just haven't been economically advantageous at this point.
So part of the barrier was source of supply. So what if the public sector could step in, say at a Megaregion scale, and invest in refueling stations? Would that be something that could assist with that conversion, or is that not?
Well, it would assist, but it has to make the total cost of ownership equal, right? So today, I mean, it's about $30,000 more for a vehicle equipped to burn natural gas. It also weighs more, so it reduces the payload. So I can't haul as much freight. So I've got to make those economics balance out. Now, I'm a believer in technology. I know at some point it'll work out, but it's too early in the adoption cycle for a company like Genuine Parts Company to take advantage of it.
Dave?
Jane?
Jane Hayes, ARC. Just quick question. You talked about how it was more economical to put your goods on rail to go out west. What's the threshold? I mean, how many miles is the breakdown between truck versus rail right now in today's economy?
Well, it varies by lane, but we see as few as 700 miles we can make the conversion. So it used to be considered over 1,000 within 700 miles. And look, we're using rail going to Kansas City from Atlanta. We're using rail going to Baltimore, into the Northeast corridor. So, and again, I think it depends on what other freight is moving in those corridors, what the railroad is willing to move an extra car for. That pricing is dynamic. It changes weekly.
We had a question toward the back. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Fred Duca, University of Maryland. When you talked about the conversion to rail and saying the rail was very reliable, Did any of that conversion have to do with the highway mode becoming less reliable than it had been? Or was it strictly that rail became more reliable?
I think it was more the rail became more reliable. When we tried it, I'll call a decade ago, the rail capacity was congested, their lead times were inconsistent, introduced more variability. So we haven't seen a derogation per se in our truck driving from point to point. In the rails adding going out west an extra day of lead time, but we can manage that. But I will tell you, their on-time performance has been spectacular.
Question, Mike. Talk a little bit about the distinction between your supply chain and your reverse supply chain. I listened to how you disaggregate driver sign up and you can guarantee have a certain variability and reliability. Is it just a reverse of that? Talk just a little bit about what the reverse supply chain looks like and how that gets managed in terms of your perspective.
So our reverse supply chain is really just picking up those parts that weren't used at a repair shop, bringing them back to our store, and then if need be, the store brings them back to the distribution center, and then it may go back to a supplier. We try to use the same vehicles to bring back the returns. So at night, when we're picking up or dropping off product to replenish the store, there could be a pallet of returns. And there's two components to returns for automotive. One are considered core items. So there are some things like starters, batteries, alternators that are remanufactured or recycled. So those items are returned just through, I'll call a recycling type program. Others are items not used going back to be restocked for resale. But so the drivers will pick those up and try to leverage the vehicle capacity coming back. It's a little different for the courier model because those variable couriers want to drop off and go somewhere else. And so we're still kind of working through how we manage that. And we're trying to do that more on a once per day, bring the returns back.
But you still see using couriers on the reverse?
We would, yes. And again, what we see it taking place short term is kind of as a flex capacity because we have an investment in our current fleet. We have current drivers, so we see it as kind of that flex capacity. So today we're using our normal afternoon delivery to say, and we'll pick up your returns in the afternoon and bring them back. But as we kind of project out in the future, we think that could be just incorporated into a daily run or another delivery mode for a courier. Stop by this store, get these 3 pallets, bring them back to this location.
Thank you.
We've got a question over in the back wall, please.
My question was related to the reverse, the nearshoring. You're hearing people talking about going to Mexico, and you mentioned looking at ports and how you handle your long supply chains. How does that change when you put the land, the Canadian, Mexican traffic patterns against the imported traffic stuff going through a port? Kind of different networks, different geography, different drivers.
I'm not sure if I understand the entire question, but I would say this: the nearshoring has not dramatically changed our supply chain as of yet. We do operate in Mexico today, and we do operate in Canada with our business, and we have many cross-border shipments. We have not seen a dramatic change in the traffic patterns today, nor our order patterns. If there is some nearshoring taking place, we haven't seen it manifest itself in our supply chain yet.
Kent.
Hey, Mike, question about genuine parts movement to deliver at night to the stores. First question is, when did y'all start that? Secondly, what are the challenges with regards to hiring for those night shifts? And then I guess a third part would be, who else in the retail environment is utilizing those after hours, sort of 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. to resupply their stores?
Well, so first, replenishing our stores at night has been going on for 20 years. It is not new for genuine parts, and it's been part of the automotive aftermarket business for a long time. The we used to think that the challenge of getting the drivers, and we took great pride in having our own company drivers because we could trust them, and they were dependable and reliable. That all changed with driver management systems and barcodes. So what we thought was a competitive advantage, even our most trusted drivers, when we put on driver management systems, we realized that they had a good thing going. They weren't working as busy as we thought they were. So now what we find is those are desirable jobs for truck drivers. We are concerned about the overall driver shortage, but people enjoy those night delivery jobs because there is less congestion. They are unsupervised. Now, we're watching them electronically, but they're driving on roads that aren't congested. It's Monday through Friday type work. They're home every day. So for truck drivers, and it's a standard flat rate that we don't even, I mean, we outsourced it. So the companies that pay them, it's a flat rate. They don't have any trouble getting drivers for it. And driver management systems help that. The food industry does, I believe. Grocery stores are moving that way. We think a lot of retailers are moving that way. Again, to get rid of that variability that they experience during the day making deliveries.
Why don't we do a couple more questions, and then we're going to have Dr. Ross join us, and then we'll continue this conversation a little bit further. But question right here. Jeff?
Thank you. Have you seen any challenges from the new hours of service that went into effect on July 1st?
Well, we haven't seen them in our own supply chain, but we do see that from, I'll call LTL carriers and independent truckload carriers that we use when we do broker out a load, that the distance they can travel in a given day is shorter. So we know the impact's out there. We haven't seen it directly yet. It's still kind of early in the cycle, but we know it'll have an impact on our supply chain going forward. We're more concerned about CSA, quite frankly, taking drivers out of the pool than hours of service.
All right, question right here. Last question, and then we'll ask Dr. Ross to join us.
I'm Vidya myself from Federal Highway. It's very, very interesting to listen to you. It's very absorbing, especially for the public agencies. We never get to know this kind of unraveling the story of how the supply chain logistic works. As you know, sir, the public sectors are so good putting up those 20, 30 years plan and working towards that way. But listening to you, that may not be a good thought because your long-term plan, as we all know now, 5 years. So if that is the message for us, how can we reorient ourselves? Now we have here MPOs, the cities, the state, and the federal. What's your message? What do you want to tell us such that we can do a better job to fit your business plan rather than what we are looking?
Well, I wouldn't discourage it from the long-term planning. Remember, we're reacting to consumer behavior. So, I mean, we don't like change. Like everyone else, we like it if it doesn't affect us. But we're being forced to change to changes in consumer behavior. And as I was speaking to someone this morning, I mean, we already see it where how people order. They're ordering from their iPads and their iPhones, and the expectation for quick delivery, they want to see access to our inventory. So we used to keep our inventories kind of private to ourselves. Now it's commonplace to let people see your inventory, and people are making buying habits based on what we have in stock. So we're reacting to, I'll call, general mega trends with consumer behavior, and we know the millennials are going to change that a lot. We train automotive technicians as part of our business model, and we have a lot of great trainers that go out and physically train people. Today, the technicians coming out of school, they don't want to talk to anybody. They just want a link to a YouTube video that they can download, and they're good, you know? So, I mean, that causes our people concern, because that was one of our value propositions. We'll train you, we'll show you knowledge. You know, we're the NAFA know-how guys, right? So, it's interesting to watch these young millennials say, I don't want to talk to your sales guy, just send me a link, send me a text, show me the YouTube video, and we have a lot of them now. I mean, our IT guys, you know, it used to be taboo to be surfing the net on YouTube watching a video, right? Now you have to go, hey, it's a real business need. They're making a video for distribute to our customers to how to change a starter. I mean, we're doing that kind of stuff. So we're reacting versus, I'd say, leading.
Excellent. Dr. Ross, would you mind joining us? Because I think there's a question I want to, I've kind of been waiting to ask, and I want both of you to weigh in on it if you would. And I'm biased, I'll admit. I work for the Metro Atlanta Chamber, so you know, my kids hopefully are going to get to go to college, because I did a good job here advocating for and promoting the Metro Atlanta region. For a long time, a lot of the people in the room, for a lot of the last decade, we spent a tremendous amount of energy and effort and investment to connect major places in these regions. And you had some great maps up, and although it went away, so we've got a Microsoft commercial now. But we spent a lot of time connecting these regions, these activity centers and these centers of commerce. Are we at a point where should there be a shift of focus to these regions that drive so much economic activity, so that we can optimize the infrastructure that we do have on the ground? I know Mike and I have talked about, you know, from the role of planners in here, you know, what should be the emphasis? We just had a great question about that. Should it be an optimization of the infrastructure we have? Should we add more lanes to interstate highways that connect distant places, or should we make those places work internally better? Any opinions, Dr. Ross?
So let me jump in. I want to share a quick story, first of all, and then I'll answer the question, and then I have a question for you, Mike, because I get to ask questions too. I spent my day yesterday sharing our morning conversation when you told me what Mike was going to talk about, and he said that when you walk in to get an oil change, you walk in and that's when they order the filter. And I couldn't believe that, and then they still guaranteed 30 minutes sort of turnaround. That to me was inconceivable. And as we sit here and talk about modeling supply chains and logistics, and it turns on a dime and changes almost constantly, it's extremely problematic. So my brain has been scrambled trying to get my head, should I say, around that kind of a logistics framework. But I think it speaks to exactly the set of challenges that we have. And I know your competitors are also availing themselves of the same thing. But you said something that I think may have some lessons for us on the transportation and the public sector side. You talked about reducing redundancies. One of our challenges is the whole idea initially was we have a heavily redundant transportation system, so you have lots of ways that you can travel, right? Well, are all of those ways equally valuable now? Are there some ways we should not maintain, not reinvest in, not make sure they connect to other places? And I guess your story about reducing redundancies and how you have allocated and outsourced so much makes me think again that we have to be extremely strategic about how we spend our limited dollars on our transportation system. And maybe redundancy isn't always the answer, as we have sort of thought about it in terms of at least our side of the equation. So that's one observation I would make, and I've been thinking about that for a while. We've put a lot of things on the ground we didn't have. All roads are not serving the same purpose now. So this takeaway idea or reducing or really being strategic in how we spend our dollars, I think, just based on hearing you talk, has some merit, would be one of the things that I would offer. And I guess I would say and the whole point of this is there are places that have to be connected. There are some places that if they aren't connected, it's just broken. It does not work. And so it seems to me there's a hierarchy and a priority that we have to articulate, and that dollars have to somehow track with that. The other issue for me is talk about your employee base. What's happened over time in terms of the number of employees that you've had as you've made these kinds of changes?
Well, our employee base has, so there's two things that take place. We've been growing our business, So our employee base has been stable, maybe slightly growing, but the work content has decreased dramatically. So what now takes one person may have taken two people 5 years ago, because we're using more technology. As we combine the night deliveries, instead of 3 truck drivers driving the same route, we now have 1. So we have 2 fewer trucks, 2 fewer truck drivers. Now, we hope to grow our business enough that we put 2 more trucks back on the road with more revenue. But one of the things that you said that just struck a key with me is, for us, we were surprised at how many trucks move partially full or partially utilized. So for our mantra is, we're looking at, we want load density, both weight and cube density, and we want to try to make sure that as a truck goes to a stop, it drops something off and takes something on. If you think of how the ocean ships move, they pull into a port, they unload some full containers, put back on some empties. And they're always moving that ship with full container allocation. That's their goal anyway. So if you could just fill up the trucks that are currently on the road, utilize the available capacity, you'd probably put fewer trucks on the road. There's a lot of empty airspace moving. And I think what you'll see going forward, and this may be what's taking place in France, is by saying, if all the distribution companies are close together, can they share the transportation modes and do a better job of utilizing the transportation mode? Very similar to the intermodal rail yards. They built a place where you can drive your truck and they'll put your trailer on the train and make the long haul movement of it, right? Piggyback trailers. That's what they've basically done. They said, we're going to drive this train with 2 engines. It'll pull either 50 cars or 100, and we'll either take 50 or we'll take 100. If there's 100, we'll take them. That's more economical than taking 50. So capacity
And that's
utilization.
essentially creating capacity on the interstates and on the other surface transportation assets.
I tell our team, what we're doing in business today is what soccer moms figured out a decade ago. How to get all the people to the right games at the right times with the fewest amount of vehicles. I mean, it really is that simple. We're not doing anything revolutionary. We're just kind of following their model.
So let me put one more question to you. If you think about this concept of mega regions and think about anything that we could do if we had this kind of a spatial orientation that would be helpful to you and your business, what might 1 or 2 of those things be?
Well, we are using the mega region concept as we kind of plan going forward to say, how do we, so that gives us the impetus to say, let's bring more ocean freight and consolidate it in China, get it into the right region, and then we'll use these partnerships, night delivery networks to get it out to the stores at night when it's not congested. Drive fewer miles, haul freight fewer miles. We do know that it's always going to go to a consumer somewhere. So that's the part that I think we've missed as a country. And look, FedEx is getting into the business now of same-day delivery. UPS is doing the same thing. They're going to start doing same-day delivery. You've heard Amazon talk about same-day delivery. So consumers are saying, I don't want to have to fight the traffic. I'll just order something online so it comes to my house. I think you'll see more and more people trying to do same-day delivery. Hopefully, people like FedEx will consolidate those so that when the truck comes to your neighborhood, it's delivering to all the houses, right? So they're coming in doing one house and leaving. But I think it's here to stay that shipments will become smaller in size and more direct.
I think we have time for maybe a couple more questions if we have any. Yes, sir. William, right down front.
It sounds like this is, what you're talking about is almost the ultimate manifestation of just-in-time. Just the whole concept of just-in-time taken to its logical extreme.
Well, William, but it's not always just in time. So, we study e-commerce as well. And so if you ask people, you know, when do you want something, they say, I want it next day, next day. But when you price it for that, they don't choose next day. You know, they choose, if it costs an extra 5 cents for next day, they go with 3-day standard delivery. So to me, it's more of a convenience play. And so, you know, they're saying, do I have to get in my car and drive to a store and pick it up and drive back home, or will someone bring it to me? Now, from our perspective, if we can ship it to them directly, it's lower cost for us. Because we're going to either ship it from a DC to a store, have to receive it, put it away, repick it, and reship it, or the first time I touch it, if I can ship it right to the end consumer, that's my lowest cost. So that's one of the secrets behind people like Amazon saying free shipping. You're really paying for it.
I'm sure.
You would have paid for it if they delivered it to a store. So it's not really free, but it's an illusion of free. It's actually cheaper for them to ship it to you directly. So some people want it timely, but generally what we see is they just want it consistently.
Well, Mike, I'll tell you what, as you can see, Mike is one of the brightest folks I know in terms of transportation and logistics and supply chain, and that's why we want to thank him. We use him a lot. I think we risk overusing you sometimes, but your leadership is greatly valued here at the Metro Atlanta Chamber, and even, you know, on a much broader standpoint than that, nationally and globally as well. So anyway, let's give Mike a huge hand. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have this conversation with you. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.